Hey guys, this is Avilash from Selenium Express and I welcome you to the episode number 1 of our Spring tutorial series. And today we'll be talking about Spring inversion of control. So by the end of this tutorial, you'll get your first application running in Spring. So I'm really excited. Hope you are too. So let's get started. Alright guys, so now I am not going to tell you any kind of theory over here. I know you hate theory, me too. What we love is we love to write code, and that's what we're going to do right now. So as you can see right now in my screen, I'm in my Eclipse, and over here I do have a very simple project here called Spring Ioc. I've just created a very simple Java project, and right now what we are going to do over here, we're going to start writing code over here. So we're not going to talk about any kind of theoretical things right now. So rather we're going to write some code and we're going to experience the thing and we're going to get our theories done, right? So let's get started. Okay, so right now I have a very simple project here called Spring Ioc, and in my src folder, which is empty, I'm going to create a new package right now over here, and I'm going to name this particular package as com.seleniumexpress.ioc, and I'm going to hit finish, right? Okay, so right now actually we are going to create a very simple scratch level application here, right? So our app should be consist of few classes, few interfaces and all these things, right? So let me create a interface first, and I'm going to name my interface as sim, right? And I'm going to hit okay. So right now my sim interface is ready, and let me maximize it, and there you go. And in my sim interface, let's say if somebody is manufacturing a sim, they need to follow this particular interface, and they must provide, if somebody want to manufacture a sim, they must provide a function called calling, because everybody should be able to call by using a sim. And let's say everybody should be able to browse internet if they are actually using a sim, right? So this is actually an interface. Now let's say there are some implemented classes are there. So let's create our first implementation class over here. Let's say our class is Airtel, and I'm going to hit finish here, and I do have a simple class right now here called Airtel. Now Airtel is a sim, so this particular class Airtel must implement my sim interface. So let me do it. So class Airtel implements the sim interface. Sim, there you go. Okay, so right now in our sim interface, we know we have two different methods over here. Now our Airtel class must need to provide the implementation for all the unimplemented methods, right? It's very simple interface concept here. Okay, so right now we have overridden all our methods over here which belongs to our sim interface. So right now let's give a dummy implementation to all these interface methods, right? So let's say sysout, and for calling I'm gonna say calling using Airtel mobile. There you go. And I'm gonna copy this. Let's do it once again. I'm actually really lazy, so I'll have another sysout over here, and this is my data method. So I'm gonna say this browsing browsing internet using Airtel sim. There you go. Okay, so now let's say we have another implemented classes for our sim interface. Let's say Vodafone. Okay, so I'm going to copy this Airtel class right now, and I'm going to paste it over here again, and I'm going to rename it to Vodafone. There you go, and I'm going to hit OK here. So my Vodafone classes is also ready, and I'm just going to change this implemented method Airtel to Vodafone, and here also browsing internet using Vodafone sim. Okay, we are ready, right? Okay, so right now we have few classes and interface what we can use as we go progress with this particular tutorial. So right now we have our SIM ready, Airtel and Vodafone. Now let's use this particular SIM in a mobile. Okay, so again I'm going to create a new class here called mobile. So I'm gonna name it as mobile, and once you're happy with that, click on finish, right? So I have another class here right now called mobile, and let's say in my mobile class I'm gonna have a main method because I want to call my methods over here, and I'm gonna create few objects here. Okay, so first of all, now let's say I want to use the Airtel SIM card. Okay, so how can I use the Airtel SIM card? Obviously I need to create the object for Airtel, right? Equal to new Airtel, right? So I'm going to use my Airtel class method right now. So let's say Airtel dot calling here, and again Airtel dot data, because I want to use the internet. There we go. So right now let's run this particular program. So I'm gonna click on mobile, I'll have a right click, and I'll go to run as and run as Java application, and there you go, calling using Airtel mobile and browsing internet using Airtel SIM. Alright, I've written Airtel mobile here. Let's change it to SIM. This doesn't sound good here, so let me change it to Airtel SIM. So again I have copy pasted it in the Vodafone, so obviously I have to change it over here as SIM, right? Okay, so there you go, right? Nothing fancy here, no rocket science here, very simple and very straightforward. Okay, so right now let's say tomorrow I don't want to use the Airtel SIM. Let's say Vodafone is providing unlimited night call, and I want to have that feature, so I want to use Vodafone SIM card. So again I need to make changes of the source code, right? So without making changes to this, can I use the Vodafone right now? No, I have to change it, right? So first of all, what I need to do, I need to create the Vodafone object here, right? So let's remove this and let's create the Vodafone class object. Vodafone equal to new Vodafone, right? There you go. But again right now there is some problem over here, right? So here all the methods that I'm using does have the previous class reference, right? The Airtel class reference is here. So right now again I need to make changes to this particular calling method reference and the data method reference, because they need to use this Vodafone here. So right now if I run it, then again I can able to use the Vodafone class methods, right? Calling using Vodafone SIM, browsing internet using Vodafone SIM. Alright, all good. But the problem that we found over here, whenever we're using the class reference over here, we have to make changes to our source code again and again, because all our methods are using actually the implementation class reference, which is actually not good. So we can use the software engineering best practices over here. So what we can do, we can just use the interface reference, right? So who is our interface? SIM. So I can do SIM equal to new, let's say I want to use the Vodafone, so new Vodafone, and sim.calling, control Z, sim.calling here, and sim.data here, right? There you go. So right now my implementation class is Vodafone, right? So if I run it, the Vodafone specific methods will be get called. If I want to change it to Airtel, now if I'll make it Airtel here, now my Airtel specific method will be get called, right? Runtime polymorphism, we have already studied it in polymorphism, right? Calling using Airtel SIM and browsing internet using Airtel SIM, right? That's good, right? That's really cool. So that's the benefits of using the interface reference over here, right? That's good. But right now I want to make this particular app configurable, right? Just think like we are creating this particular app for a client, right? And our client said make this app configurable. You don't need to touch the source code, okay? The source code need to be fixed, right? If you want to make any changes, make the changes outside of the application, right? Don't just bang the source code of your application, right? So now what we can do, again we're using the interface reference over here. We are kind of safe, but again let's think like tomorrow the geo came and I want to use the geo class method. I need to come over here to this particular class, and again I need to make the changes over here. I need to change this Airtel to geo, right? So we have to do our configuration right over here. So how to make it configurable, right? I don't want to touch the source code of this. The source code should be constant, right? And how can we make it configurable? And that's what we are going to talk right now. Alright, so right now this is our requirement, right, that we have discussed. Don't touch the source code, and the app that we have built, that should be configurable. Now we are in a kind of bad situation, we don't know what to do. Then I met my friend Spring Framework. Alright, then I asked Spring, hey Spring, can you solve my problem? And Spring said, of course yes, but let's just learn a little about me first. And I said, of course, I'm interested to learn about you. Let's go for it. Okay, so now I asked Spring, okay, so just tell me how you are going to help me and what you actually do. Now Spring Framework told me, I actually do a whole lot of things, but by looking at your problem, you are a beginner, I don't want to tell more things right now, but by looking at your problem, I can tell you, I can create objects for you, right? And I can manage your objects, right? Then I said to Spring, okay, that's a very nice thing, but how you are going to create objects for me? And why you are actually creating the object? Then Spring said, see, you are a developer, right? And you should always focus on writing the business logic, right? Don't just give your time to create objects and do all these stupid things. I'm going to create objects for you. I'm going to give you the objects. You just take it and use it, okay? And I'm going to manage your objects. So I can create objects for you and I can manage your objects. Then I found it really interesting and I asked Spring, hey Spring, tell me how you're going to create objects for me and where you're going to manage them. Then Spring told me the actual process. And what he told me that, okay, so you have a config file, okay, you have a kind of config file, and in that config file, you just mention all the classes that you want to create the object for. For example, if you want to create the class A object and class B object and class C object, then put it in a config file. And what I will do, I have my own container, right? So Spring has its own container called Ioc Container, and it doesn't depend on anybody, right? It has its own container. Think like whenever you used to write servlet and JSP program, you need to deploy it in the Tomcat, right? So Tomcat is a kind of third-party thing, and you have to depend on Tomcat, right? So Spring doesn't depend on anybody. He does have its own container called Ioc Container. So what Spring said, he has its own container called Ioc Container, and what this container is going to do, it is going to read your config file and all the classes that you have mentioned over here, it is going to create object for them and it is going to manage them inside its container. Oh, very simple, isn't it? And it's looking really, really cool. So what we understood from here, we have a config file, we're going to mention our classes over here, and the Spring is going to read this config file, and whatever the classes that we have mentioned over here, Spring is going to create the object over here, and it is going to store this everything, it's going to store all this object inside this container called Ioc Container. So obviously container is going to contain something, right? And here this container is containing the object. And this object that Spring creates, we call it bin. Okay, so whenever you hear this term bin, just think like these are the objects that is inside the Ioc container, right? So all the object the Spring creates and manages inside the Ioc container is called as Spring bin. Simple, right? Okay, so right now I told Spring, okay Spring, that's fine, you are creating the object and you are storing it inside your container, you are holding it inside your container. But let's say I want to use the A class object. Now how can I use that? Now Spring said, okay, don't worry, you just use this method called getBin, okay? And you want to use this A class object, right? So mention A over here. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to give you the A class object. Simple, right? You just take this object and use it. You don't need to care, how I create the object and what I'm doing, right? You got your object, now perform operation, right? You don't need to create the object. You don't need to waste your time, right? I'll make your life easy. All right. Okay. So right now, let's say, okay, let's say if I want to use the C class object similarly, so I can mention C over here, and C is tracking this object. Now I'll get my C class object. So now I can take this object and I can do my operation, right? It's a very nice feature. So now I told Spring, okay, Spring, you gave me a broad level idea, high level idea. I understand the thing. Now tell me how I'm going to use this Ioc container. I understand you have a container called Ioc Container. This is kind of a story, but just tell me how I'm going to use it practically, right? Now Spring said, okay, now you hear the actual story. if you talk about the IOC container, now as of now you understood I create objects and I manage object inside my IOC container, right? And the way you actually can use my container, use my IOC container is, I actually have two different types of IOC container. Okay, one is called a bin factory and one is called a application context, right? So if we want to use the IOC container in Spring, whether we need to use a bin factory or we need to use a application context. Okay, so I asked Spring, okay, which one I should use? Either I should use a bin factory or I should use a application context. So then Spring said, okay, think like, you have a Nokia 1100 and you have a Nokia 6. Okay, so which one you will use? And I said, obviously I'll use the Nokia 6 because Nokia 6 has more feature. Obviously with Nokia 1100 also I can make a call or I can send somebody a message. I can do the same thing with the Nokia 6, but apart from that I can take a selfie. I can browse internet, right? I can watch Selenium Express video in YouTube, right? Just promoting my channel a bit. Okay, so I can do a whole lot of things in Nokia 6 because Nokia 6 is kind of doing all the job that Nokia 1100 does, and apart from that it is doing some extra stuff, right? So similarly, if you talk about this bin factory and application context, this application context is kind of a big brother, or you can say elder brother of this bin factory, right? This application context can do all the work that this bin factory does, and this can also provide us some advanced feature. Okay, this we're going to talk about it later, right, in this course. Basically, we are going to use this application context over here in this course. So we understood as of now we have two types of IOC container. One is called bin factory and one is called application context. And basically we need to use this application context nowadays because this is more advanced, and this bin factory is just there for backward compatibility. Nobody is using this particular bin factory nowadays, so we'll use this one. Okay, so I understand the thing right now, but what are these things? What is this bin factory? What is this application context, right? What are they? So these are just interfaces, right? Bin factory is an interface and application context is an interface, and they both are containers, and this is legacy, this is kind of advanced, right? And in this course we are going to use this application context. Okay, but now another thing, we cannot use the interface, right? We cannot because this interface cannot function, right? We should have some implemented classes to use this interface, right? And for application context there is an implementation class available called class path XML application context, and this application context, this is an interface and this is a class. This class is implementing this application context, right? So now you imagine whenever we talk about a Spring container, imagine application context. This is a IOC container, and this application context has a implementation class called class path XML application context, and this is kind of give us the actual feeling of using a IOC container, right? Now we're going to use it right over here, right now. So let's go back to our Eclipse. Hello, got bored? Feeling boring? Don't worry. Welcome to the Spring world of programming. What does it mean? Whatever, don't worry. Let's get started with our coding. So first of all, what I'm going to do, what you are going to see over here, all this code, all these chunks I'm going to delete because we became smarter right now. We're going to use Spring. We're not going to manually create objects here. The Spring is going to create objects for us, and we're going to see the beauty of inversion of control or Spring IOC. So first of all, okay, what we have discussed here, we need to make use of Spring container, and container is going to read the config file and is going to create the object for us. Okay, so what is the container that we have understood about application context, right? Application context, and that's the one. Okay, so this application context is what? This is a interface. Okay, let me drag it somewhere to this. Okay, application context is a interface, right? And now let's give it a implementation class. First of all, let's give it a reference context equal to new application context. Can I do it? New application context? Obviously not. Application context is the interface, right? So we need to provide the implementation classes for this. And what is the implementation classes for application context? XML application context, there's the one. Okay, let's make it full screen so that you can see everything. Okay, class path application context, there you go. Okay, so we've created our container object, no worry. So right now what our container is going to do, as we have already discussed, our container is going to read the config file, and from that config file it is going to see whatever to create, or it need to create. So basically it is going to read the config file. Okay, so let's say in this case I'm going to use a config file, let's say XML file. Okay, so I need to put the name of this particular file over here. Let's say we'll give our config file name as beans.xml. all right, we're going to give our config file name as beans.xml. It doesn't exist right now, we're going to create it. So let me copy this. Okay, and we're going to create our config file right now in the class path. Why we're going to create the config file in the class path? See over here what we're writing. New, what is the implementation class name? New class path XML application context. So Spring is going to look for this particular file beans.xml in the class path. Okay, so let's create a in our class path, which is src. Let's create our config file over here. So I'll say other, and I want to actually create a XML file. So there you go, and I'm going to paste it over here, whatever I have written there, beans.xml, and I'm going to hit finish, and there you go. Our first config file is not ready yet, we're going to make it ready. But don't worry guys, if you don't know XML, don't worry about it. So I'm not going to make you feel uncomfortable over here. It's very easy, right? It's very simple. So right now what we're going to do here, we're actually going to define our beans. Beans means what? Object. Which object? The object the Spring container manages. Okay, so Spring container is going to look for the classes over here, the classes which it is going to create the object. We are going to mention those classes over here in this config file. Okay, so how we are going to mention our classes over here? So the way we are going to tell Spring that Spring, you create the object for this particular class by using this tag called bin. Okay, so we have a tag called bin, and we are going to use this particular bin tag to tell Spring that, hey Spring, you create object for this particular bin. Okay, so here I need to mention the class. Simple. CLA class spelling is correct. Okay, so here I need to mention my class name. For example, I want to create the object for this Airtel class, right? This Airtel class is here, so I want to create the object for this. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to mention here in the bin.xml file, I'm going to tell Spring, hey Spring, create the Airtel class object, and Spring is going to do it. But here we are going to provide the fully qualified path of this Airtel class. And what is the fully qualified path? Where this class is particularly present inside the com.seleniumexpress.ioc package, right? So you don't need to type it. I'm giving you a shortcut. What you'll do, you come over here, you click on this Airtel, do a right click and copy. Where is that? Copy qualified name. That's it. Click here. This is copied to your clipboard right now. You go to beans.xml and let me delete it and let me do Control V. There you go. You got the fully qualified path of your Airtel class, right? And right now, in your Spring IOC, you might have a lot of objects, right? So how you're going to track your Airtel class object? You need to give it a reference, right? By using that reference, you are going to track it. Okay, so that reference we are going to provide here by using a ID. So ID, and you have to provide the ID here. Let's say Airtel, right? So you can say this ID anything, Airtel or anything, blah blah blah, right? That's okay, right? So I am going to make it here. I'm going to make this Airtel here, Airtel, and class name is this, and that is ready. So now this is ready. So what Spring container is going to do right now, this is going to read my config file, and from this config file it is going to see, okay, this developer want me to create this Airtel class object, and it want me to give it a reference called Airtel. Now this is going to create this object inside your IOC container, right? Okay, so now guys, this particular thing is not going to work. Okay, this is a XML file, and we need to put some DTD or XSD over here. So now you might be thinking, what is DTD, what is XSD? Don't worry about it. I'm going to tell you everything about it in the end of this tutorial. Right now, let's not break the flow. I'm just going to copy something, copy the XSD and going to put it over here as a root tag, right? So that we can make this particular thing work. Okay, so I'm going to tell you what is that, what I'm going to talk about in the end of this tutorial. So I'm actually going to go to this download folder where I have downloaded my Spring Framework jars. Then I'll click here under docs and I'll click here in the Spring Framework reference and I'll go to the HTML5 and I'll click here the core.html. Okay, and from this particular file I am going to copy and paste my XSD here, right? This is kind of a beautiful book provided by Spring, and I'm going to copy this much, this XSD tag here. Okay, I'll do Command C and I'll go back to my Eclipse, and here what I'm going to do, I'm going to paste my DTD tag over here. Okay, so you can see over here we have opened the bin stack, and inside this bins we are going to define all our bins. So let me copy this, let me cut it and let me paste it inside this bins, and there you go. Now it's ready, right? So I have just copied this thing. Don't worry what are these, what this particular thing is going to do, why I've written over here. I'm going to tell you within few minutes. Okay, so right now our config file is ready. All right, so now let's go back to our mobile.java, and here we have loaded our bins.xml file. We have created our container, and our container is actually loading the bins.xml file. And whatever we understood as of now, if everything goes well, if my config file, let's have a simple config loaded. Let's have a debug line here. Okay, so if this is going to read my bins.xml file and is going to create the objects for my class whichever I have defined in my bins.xml file, which is the Airtel, then what will happen? Then this particular line will be execute successfully, and obviously I will get config loaded to my console, right? So now let's do one work. Let's run this particular application and let's say this particular line is getting executed or not. So what I'm going to do over here, I'm going to right click in the mobile.java class and I'll go to run as Java application, right? So now let's see what is going to happen. Loading XML file, loading XML bin definition from the class path resource, which is bin.xml. That means my container is reading the bin.xml, and it is and once it is successfully done, my debug line, whatever I'm written over here, this is getting executed. So that's the great work. Spring has created the object for us. Now you might have a doubt. Okay, how can you trust me? How you can be sure that Spring is actually creating the object? So, okay, so if the object is getting created, the constructor will be get called, right? So let's go to our Airtel class. Okay, let's define a constructor here. Let's say Airtel and constructor, and let's give a debug purpose line. Let's say Airtel constructor called, right? So now the thing is, when the container is going to read this bin.xml file, okay, it's found the Airtel class object it needs to create. If it is creating the Airtel class object, obviously in this Airtel class, this particular constructor will be get called, right? So let's run this particular application again and let's see that particular line is getting executed or not. Okay, so let me run it again, and there you go. First it is creating the Airtel class object, right? Airtel constructor is getting called. That means in the Airtel class, whenever it's trying to create the object, it is first calling the constructor, it is creating the object, and once the object is getting created, I'm getting this config loaded, this particular line is getting executed, right? Nothing fancy here. Okay, so our Spring is creating the object for us. All right, so now let's see what just happened in the background in my slide. All right, so let's go for it. All right, so okay, so what is happening here? We are mentioning this particular thing in our XML file, and our Spring container, which is application context, is reading this particular config file, it's reading this line. Then from here it is creating the Airtel class object inside the application context, right? And how it is creating, it is very simple. It's just doing Airtel equal to new Airtel. Why it is doing new Airtel? Because here we have mentioned Airtel, right? And why it is creating the object with this particular name Airtel? Because This is what we have mentioned here, Airtel, right? So the Spring is doing this thing internally, and here it is creating the object for us with the reference called Airtel. So whenever we need the Airtel object from this container, just use the getBin method, right? So let's go for it and let's do that. Alright, so now let's use this context object, right? So I'll say right now context inside that particular application container. What I'm going to do, I'm going to get this particular bin. Okay, which bin I want here in the bin.xml file. What I mentioned, what name I have given, Airtel, right? So let me copy this, and here I need the bin named Airtel. Hey Spring, give me that bin. Now Spring will give you that bin, and you can store it in the Airtel class reference. Let's say Airtel. Don't be confused with this particular name. Let's say Airtel Air. Okay, great. Okay, so now if you see this, now this is giving me an error. What this error is all about? Now this getBin method is actually returning an object, right? And this object cannot be cast to Airtel. So to cast it, what I'm going to do, I'm going to typecast it to this type. What is this type? Airtel. So let me write Airtel over here. Simple. There you go. Now I got my Airtel class object. Alright, so we got our Airtel class reference right now. We can easily call our Airtel methods by using this particular reference called AIR right now, right? So AIR.calling, AIR.data, right? So now let me run this particular application again. So it is going to load my class from the XML file, and then it is going to use my Airtel class methods, calling using Airtel SIM, browsing internet using Airtel SIM, right? You remember, right? We have written these two particular methods over here. We don't need the constructor right now. Let me remove it. Okay, we don't need it right now. Just to show you, I have written this thing. Okay, so now this particular methods are getting called over here, right? So whenever we're running our mobile app. So similarly, what I can do whenever I want to use my Vodafone SIM, right? So what I can do, again, I'll go to this particular bins.xml file, and here I'll change this ID to Vodafone, and this class, Airtel class, I want to change it to Vodafone class, right? Vodafone. There you go, because Vodafone class is over here in this particular package. So that's what we're mentioning over here. Let me go to this mobile.java, and this time, okay, I'll show you another approach. If you don't want to typecast it, how we can do it easily, right? You don't need to typecast it all the time. What you need to do over here, suppose in the context object right now, we have a bin created, and if we need to get this particular bin, we have to use this getBin method. And in this getBin method, we need to provide the ID, which is Vodafone. That's what we have given, and we can put a comma here, and you need the Vodafone class, right? So you can write Vodafone.class. That's it. You don't need to typecast it right now. You just simply say it is going to return you the Vodafone class object, so Vodafone, and give it Voda. There you go. It's done. No error, buddy. And now you can do Voda.calling and Voda.data. Okay, so let's run it again. There you go. Calling using Vodafone SIM, browsing internet using Vodafone SIM. That's done. We understood the logic, right? How it is working. So now let's come back to our actual work. So our client needed, right? Our app should be configurable. We do not need to toss the source code over here. Without touching the source code, this particular application should work, right? So how can we do it? So we already understood, right? The interface approach, the interface reference variable we should always use, right? So here we are using the implemented class variable. That's why we are having the problem. So here what we could do, we can use the interface variable, right? So what I can do over here, let's see. Okay, I have removed this particular thing. I'll go to my bins.xml file, and here the ID I'll give as SIM, and let's say the implementation class over here is Vodafone, because I want to use Vodafone, right? So I'll go to my mobile.java, and what I'll do context.getBin, and my bin name is what? I've given SIM here, right? So let me copy this, and let me go to this mobile.java, and I'm going to paste it over here, and I want my SIM interface reference, right? So sim.class I want to load, so that it is going to give me the SIM interface reference, right? So I'm loading the .class file of SIM interface, right? And now I can do sim.calling and sim.data, right? Because in our sim class, remember, we do have all these two methods, so we can call it, right? So let's go back to our mobile.java. Okay, there you go. So now our implementation class is what we have given the implementation class, Vodafone. Okay, so right now let's run it. Okay, finger crossed. Okay, there you go. Calling using Vodafone SIM, browsing internet using Vodafone SIM. Okay, now I want to change the implementation. I don't want to toss the source code. So how can I do it? I'll go to this bin.xml file. I'll change it to what I want to change it to. Let's say I want to use the Airtel class. So Airtel. There you go. Okay, that's it. Now I'll go to my mobile.java. I will run this application. And let's see what's going to happen. There you go. Calling using Airtel SIM, right? It's easily configurable. Tomorrow a new technology, a new SIM will come to the market. Okay. Let's say Jio has come. Let me copy this Airtel class. Let's paste it here. Jio. Okay. So Jio is an Indian cellular company if anybody is watching outside of India. Okay. So in the Jio class, what I can do, calling using Jio SIM, browsing internet using Jio SIM. That's it. So right now, let's say in the mobile.java, I want to use the Jio class. Okay, I don't want to toss the source code over here. What I can do, I'll go to the bin.xml and here I'll change this to Jio. That's it. The class name that I want to use, right? That's it. Let's go to the mobile.java and let's run it and finger crossed. And nothing to worry, buddy. It is going to run that, right? So now our mission is successful because our app is configurable right now. And how we did it? By using the Spring inversion of control concept. And what this inversion control is doing for us, it is creating the object for us, right? This feel it over here. So what we used to do previously over here, we used to create, suppose we want to create the Jio class object. So Jio equal to new Jio. So here what we are doing, here we are manually creating the object, right? But here what we are doing, we are not using this type of code anymore, right? Here what we are doing, here framework is taking control and framework is creating the object for us. It is kind of an inverse process, right? We are not itself. The framework is taking control and the framework is creating the object for us. The framework is managing the object for us, and the framework, the IOC is also going to take care of one more thing, that is it is going to inject the dependencies. That's what we are going to talk in the next video. But in this tutorial, whatever we understood, the inversion of control, the control is taken by the framework to create the object, and once that is done, we get the object, we're just using the object. Very simple thing, right? So that's what the Spring IOC actually does. It is creating the object for us and it is injecting the dependencies, if there is any, what we are going to learn in the next video, right? So that's all about today, but as I have promised, before we wrap up, I need to tell you one more thing, right? In the bins.xml file, here what these particular things are, right? Okay, so don't get confused. What this thing is, see, right now if I write an invalid tag over here, let's say I'm writing my name, Abhilash. That's it. Is it a valid tag? No. Who is going to validate it? The Spring is, this XSD is going to validate it, right? So this is an invalid tag. So this particular thing we have written over here because we want to validate whatever the tags that we are writing, if the grammar is correct, if we are opening and closing it, if we are writing it properly, who is going to validate? This particular tag is going to validate it. And one more thing is, whenever I'm writing this bin, so this bin is an XML tag. Somebody has written it. That's why we are using it, right? So where that particular file is getting stored, right? So that particular file is this one, spring-bins.xst. So where this particular file is getting stored, which is the location, which is the schema location, that is also getting taken care by this xsd tag, right? This thing that we put over here. So this particular thing is actually doing two work for us. It is actually validating our tag over here, is checking our grammars, and also one more thing it is doing, where this particular tags are there, that is also taken care by this thing, because it is finding the schema location, right? So actually, this particular thing, this bin.xsd, if you want to see where it is there, you can go to your Spring downloaded file. Okay, let me show you that. So let's say here I am in my Spring jars that I have downloaded over here, and with that I am getting the schema, right? So if you go to this bins here, you will going to get this spring bins.xsd, right? So this is what we are using, right? So you can see spring bins.xsd. This is what we are using, right? And from here we are going to fetch this particular tag bin, right? So that's how we are using it. Don't worry about it. I'm going to tell you everything about it in the coming tutorial. But for now, just remember, these are the tags which is helping us for validating and to track the schema location, right? First, it is going to track the schema location in the internet. If it is the internet connection is not available, it is going to find this particular XSD file from your local class path. From your Spring jars, it is going to find it, right? Here it is your Spring jars, and from your Spring jars, it is there is a specific jar. I don't want to show you right now, but let me tell you that in the Spring bins jar, if you see this particular jar here, it is actually that particular XSD file is available, right? So I'll show you that. Okay, let's go to XML pin factory bins.factory.xml. If I'll open this, you can see the jar is available. This particular XSD is available. Spring bins.xsd. This is the one, right? So from here it is getting this particular XML file, right? This is already written by somebody else, right? We have not written it. We are just using this bins tag over here, right? This bin tag over here. And how we're doing it? Because of this, right? Okay, so this is kind of a broad level idea what this particular thing is actually doing, but don't be worried about it. If you don't understand it, I'm going to have some different tutorials explaining everything about it in near future. So thank you very much guys for watching this tutorial. In the next tutorial, we are going to talk about another feature of Spring IOC. But before we wrap up, there is a question for you, okay? It's going to be pretty easy. What do you understand about Spring IOC and what do you understand about Spring Bin? Write it in one line, okay? What do you understand about Spring IOC? What features it is giving you? And what do you understand about Spring Bin? Okay, I'm not going to tell you the answer here. Write it down in the comment, okay? I'm going to check it out, and I'll feel really good if you already got the concept. Thank you very much guys for watching this. I'll see you within another episode of Spring where we'll talk about Spring dependency injection. See you there. Bye-bye. Hey guys, hopefully you have enjoyed watching this video, and if you did, don't forget to like this video and don't forget to subscribe to my channel. And if you don't like this video, still also you can subscribe to me because everybody needs a second chance. So do I. Alright, so I barely can speak. I do have my health down, and I'll see you in the next video. As I promised you, I'll come back with a new episode of Spring. So see you then. Bye bye. Take care and happy coding.